welcome to the video. My name is Maze, and today I'm going to be showing you how to lay out this Gothic trefoil. A trefoil is an ornamentation used in Gothic architecture. The word trefoil comes from French, which is derived from the Latin trifolium, meaning three-leaf plant. The trefoil is a basic design used in tracery, which is the name given to the ornate windows and doors found in Gothic cathedrals. The plan for this trefoil is as an ornamentation for this podium I've been commissioned to build. The video for that will come out when I'm done with it. And I'm going to cut and carve this design into this alder piece and then place it on top of the maple piece, and hopefully the contrast between the two colors of the wood will make this particular design pop out. So in this video I'm going to show you how to lay out one of these trefoils, and then in the next one I'm going to cut it out and carve it, and we'll find out if it works the way it did in my mind. So one of the unique things about tracery design is all you really need to do it is a straight edge and a compass. We don't even take measurements on the ruler really, we're just using it as a straight edge, and we're just using basic geometry to lay out our pattern. I feel it's kind of a weakness of many beginner woodworkers and even some professional woodworkers is we become reliant on our modern tools and digital calipers and laser levels, and tape measures are nice and I use them all the time, but if you could build a cathedral that stands for 800 plus years with just a straight edge and a compass, you don't really need anything else. And every once in a while I like to go old school just so I could understand how it works, and sometimes it's quicker and easier just to use a compass to measure things real quick or something like that. So it's a good discipline or a good method to at least understand how it works. So I'm going to be showing you how to do that. So the first step we need to do is we need to find the center of our board, and so it's pretty simple. You just go corner to corner with your straight edge from one side and then corner to corner from the other side, and where those two lines meet is the center. So next I need to find my vertical center line, so I set the radius of my compass a little bit past the halfway mark of the board, and then I use the joint of the book match as my horizontal reference line, and I draw two arcs from both sides, and then where those two arcs meet, the 2 points where those two arcs meet and the center are my references for drawing my vertical center line. After doing that, I realized that using the joint as my reference wasn't a good idea. You can't count on that always being there. A better way to do it is to go from the corners. So again, you set your compass to a little bit past halfway and you draw an arc from each corner, and doing that gives you two X's that you could use as your reference marks for drawing your vertical center line. And so right here I'm using the template that I drew, and I'm taking my measurement from the center of the triangle to the point of the triangle, and I'm locking that in. So I'm going to show you how I make a template. The first thing you need to do is draw a line, and it could be any length. Mine's 2 inches, but it doesn't matter, but the longer the line, the bigger your trefoil will be. So then you set the radius of your compass to the length of that line, so to the two endpoints, and then you could draw a whole circle, but all you're worried about is where they meet. And so I just draw small arcs about the center point, and where they cross is my reference point, and that's the midpoint of the line that we drew. and I could use that as a reference point to draw the two sides, or the two remaining sides of an equilateral triangle. After that, we need to find the center of our triangle, and in order to do that, we need to bisect each of the lines of the triangle, and we need to find the midpoint. The way you find the midpoint of a line is you set the radius of your compass to a little bit past halfway, and then from each endpoint of the line you draw an arc, and where those two arcs meet is above the midpoint of your line. And then we could use the tip of the triangle as a reference point and our X as a reference point, and we could bisect each line, and where those lines meet, now you only need two, but we might as well do three. Where each of those lines meet is the center of our triangle. So now I'm going to draw a circle around the triangle, and you can see the radius of the circle is slightly smaller than the sides of the triangle. And so I'm drawing my circle around it, and so now I drew a circle around the triangle, and what I need to do on the piece is draw a triangle within my circle. So I take that same radius, I haven't moved my compass, and I draw a circle on my board. Now I keep my compass set to the radius of the circle, and I put my compass in at 12 o'clock at where the vertical center line and the circle meet, and I make a mark. And then where the circle and that mark meet, I put my compass in that spot and I make another mark. And I begin walking around the circle, circumnavigating the circle. And it should take about 6 times, and at the 6th time, I should end up right back at 12 o'clock. Well, I should make a mark there. And now I have 6 evenly spaced marks. And I could use those marks to make my equilateral triangle. Pretty much every other mark I could use as a reference point to make an equilateral triangle. And I end up with an equilateral triangle perfectly centered in my board. So you could see that it ended up being 2 inches again. So after all that, it ended up being the same size that I wanted. Again, the size of the side of the triangle tells you how big the trefoil is going to be. So I'm setting my compass to the side of the trefoil. And I cleaned all the lines I don't need off with sandpaper. I just need the center line and the triangle. And so again, I set it to the side, the same size as the side of the triangle, and I'm finding the center of each of the sides of the triangle. And the distance of that point is one side of the triangle away from each of the points. So I'll connect the tip and that point and bisect each of my lines. I'm going to need that line to lay out my trefoil. And then on this third one, it's just the center line is the line. And since I use the side of the triangle as my length, you could see that my points, the 2 points that I made on my line and the point of the triangle all line up, and they're parallel to the other side of the triangle. And so I'll create a bigger triangle around my original triangle, kind of in a Triforce Legend of Zelda pattern, but all these triangles are equilateral. So this is actually my road map. You could see on my template that's where the road map would be. And you should really just draw up a couple of these in practice and do whatever different sizes you want to figure out what size you want your trefoil to be. But this is the roadmap. None of these lines are actually going to be left over when we're done. So this is where you get to make some decisions. You could set your compass to be right in the middle of the side of the triangle, like that, just to that line, and that will give you perfect squares or perfect circles in your trifoil, and the circles will just barely touch each other when they won't overlap, they'll just touch each other. It's a very simple and kind of the basic design for it. So I want to make one that overlaps, where the circles overlap a little bit. So I need to make like an arbitrary measurement. So I'm kind of about that big. So I'm going to draw a line, and then I'm just going to pick 2 points on that line, and I'm going to find the center and draw a line that's perpendicular. I don't really care about the measurements. The main thing is that it's perpendicular. And so now I have it's about 1/8 of an inch increment from that original intersection to the bigger increment. That's going to be how I measure from now on. And you'll see a little bit how I use it. So this is, I'm set to the radius, and I want to be one of my increments bigger than the radius of this circle. So right now it's set to the radius. So I set my pencil right on the intersection, push the other side in, and then I extend my pencil to that other line, and that's 1. That's going to be my measurement, and that's 1 for right now, 1 increment. And then I start on the point, and I draw just a small arc up to the line, my other line of my roadmap. Why don't I just draw the whole circle? Well, I'm going to show you why not in a minute. But for now, I'm just drawing my circles to the line, my outside line that I made. So the reason why I stopped my circle early is the typical element of Gothic architecture. One of the defining elements is the pointed arch. And the pointed arch is made by using, say this is a doorway. So the width of the doorway is the radius of your circle. And then from the both sides you use that, and they come together in a pointed arch. So right here I'm just finding the center of my doorway. And a typical normal arch, the width of the doorway would be the diameter of the circle. So the pointed arch is the radius, and a regular arch is the diameter. And so here I found center, so I'm setting my compass to that, and then I'm making the arch. And so that's how a regular arch is made. So if I were to use the pointed Gothic arch for my trefoil, it would look kind of like that. That's too pointed. I want my points to be a little bit more subtle than that. So what you do is you go a little bit off center. So you draw from a point that's off center, and you draw your pointed arch, and it gives you a more subtle pointed arch. And so you can see there that there's the Gothic arch on the top, but I have a subtle arch like in my template. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my compass to the point on my map. Then I'm going to use my little measurement that I made and go 1 increment bigger. So then I set my pencil on the intersection, stick in my compass, and then I move it up my increment. And so now it's 2 increments bigger. And then I'm putting those marks on my outside line, and it's from these marks that I'll be making my little pointed arch. So they are off-centered by the same amount, and so they'll meet in the center. the point will be in the center. I hope this is making sense. I hope you could see it and what I'm saying makes sense as you see it. So now I start off from my off-center points, and I from each side, and I bring that together, and I make a subtle point on my trefoil. And I do that from each side. So all this part that's in the center of the trefoil is going to be cut out, so I could really stick my compass in there, so I have a hole kind of that I could come back to and always put my compass in the same hole. So now I need to set it back to what my original radius was, so I set it to my point on my road map. Then I'll go back to my board and I'll increase it by 1 increment. So I'll set my pencil on the intersection, push my compass into the board, and then I'll extend my compass, my increment. So this is 1 bigger than the last one. And then I'll go around and I'll make the circle part of my trefoil again on each side. And so now I'll put my compass on my off-center point, and I'll increase my compass to that line where those 2 lines meet. And from there I'll make my pointed arch. And now I'll be able to do that from all of my off-center points, should be exactly the same. And so all my lines should line up. And then I need to set my compass back to the original radius of the last kind of trefoil I made, so that I can go back and then increase it by 1. So I'll have basically 3 trefoils, 1 bigger than the last one by the same amount. And I'll just end up going back and doing it all again for the 3rd one. And then again, I'll have to reset my compass going from my off-center point to meet my line. And that will be the radius of my pointed arches. And so gotta go from the off-centered one. And so I have a trefoil, 3 trefoils that are all a little bit bigger than each other, and they're really even. You'd have a hard time doing this any other way and making it this even. So now I'm going to make an outside border. So I take my compass, and from the points of the triangle I set it to the point of the furthest out pointed arch, and I draw my border on the outside. So I do that on all 3 sides, and now it's definitely starting to look like something. So now I want to go 1 of my increments inward. So what I'll do is I'll take my board and I'll put my pencil on the increment, stick my compass in, and then I'll bring it back to the intersection. And so then I'll do the same thing from that point. As you can see, it lines up with the second line of the trefoil, because I'm using the same increment each time in a very precise way. It lines up, you know, the center line of the trefoils is one increment smaller than the outside line, and I set up the last one to be equal with the outside, so one increment smaller lined up, and so then I'm going to go one increment smaller for the third line of the border. And now it's starting to look like an actual trefoil. So I'm going to use some sandpaper to clean up some of the lines that I don't need and fill in the parts I'm going to cut out. And so here's what it looks like when it's all said and done. I haven't decided if I'm going to do something in the center of the trefoil yet, so I didn't fill that in. But the outside parts that I filled in with pencil, I'm going to cut those out, and I'm probably going to cut out most of the middle part. But that's what it looks like. And that's the video. I think it turned out well. I'm happy with it. I made this video because, you know, I like this design and I couldn't find any videos on YouTube that showed me how to do it. I found some that showed me how to do it without the pointed arch, you know, on the pedals, but I wanted to do one with a pointed arch, and there was no videos showing me how to do it. I couldn't find them, so I had to just use some geometry, pick up little bits and pieces from what I could find, and kind of figure it out. So it might not be the most efficient method. If you know of a more efficient method, tell me about it in the comments down below. Leave me a link to a video if that's it, or just tell me how I could do it more efficiently. I would love to learn. And we didn't get to make any dust, unfortunately, but we'll make some dust next time, I guess. But thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next video where I'll be carving this out, and stay tuned for the actual build video of this pedestal that I'm making. And click like, subscribe so you can see those videos coming out, and tell me what you think, and you know, support your local craftsmen, or go out in your workshop and play with a compass and a straight edge so that you could make some more dust.